everybody. I am so bad at this technical stuff. Um, I just tried to do a screen share so we could get started, and when I did, my computer froze and wasn't really working. Um, here, I'm going to move this over here. So, everybody is on mute right now. We're on listen only mode, and I wanted to share some of I wanted to type some things kind of like in a PowerPoint setting so you guys could follow along the topic that we're going to be discussing today. Excuse me, that we're going to be discussing today, but for some reason the system is not letting me do it. Um, so I apologize for that. So you guys might want to take some notes on everything that we're going to be talking about, um, and we're going to go from there. So first of all, I want to start off by welcoming all of the new people. Um, Seems like there's some new people, and there's some people from many different cities. I see Orlando. There's somebody from Orlando, and somebody from Chicago and Houston, and here locally where I am, Arlington, New York, and a couple people internationally. We got some people from Russia and England, and special thanks to the person from England because I will be in England very, very early next month, and I'm super duper excited about it. I'm going to be giving a lecture at Brief for my good friends Chris Iveson, Harvey Ratner, and Evan George. So I am jumping up and down, ready to get on that plane. Um, so in fact, I think the next time we do this webinar, I will be doing it from England, which I think now it's in the 6 p.m. range there. So anyway, welcome everybody, and thank you for participating in our monthly webinars. We talk about solution building and couples therapy. And again, I apologize that I'm not going to be able to screen share. I'm going to have to figure out how to, if there's something wrong with my computer or what the delay is. But I do sincerely apologize. So you might want to take notes, because the thing that I want to talk about today is couples arguing in session. Now, the past couple of months, for those of you who have been on these calls, we've been watching a session that I did with a couple by the name of Dave and Celeste, and I'm going to show a small part of that after we get done with what I'm going to say here. I'm going to show a small part of that to demonstrate something, but I'm doing research with Dr. Sarah Smock Jordan. Now Sarah Smock Jordan. She's published previously as Dr. Sarah Smock. She's recently been married, and Adam Frower, Dr. Adam Frower, that is. And we meet once a week on Skype and talk about aspects of solution building and the different components of our research. And last week we started having a conversation. So what they're doing is they're taking videotapes of me doing therapy, and they're using a research tool known as microanalysis to look at how the language is constructed between me and the particular couple and the particular clients. So for this particular meeting, they had watched a tape of me doing therapy, and they were analyzing it with this tool and pointing out the different ways that I've been applying building practices and the solution focused approach with couples, and how it differs from what we know about solution focused therapy and the way that it works with individuals. So we had this really fascinating conversation, which led to one of them asking me how often couples argue in my office. And when I answered the question, I could clearly tell that Adam and Sarah didn't believe me, because what I said was strange. But the honest truth is, it happens very, very rarely. So much so that I would probably say it's about once every 6 months, maybe once every year. It is extremely rare that couples will argue in my office. Now, I know from traveling and teaching people to practice psychotherapy with couples, I know that arguing in couple sessions is actually one of the reasons why most clinicians don't want to work with couples, because they feel like they're just refereeing arguments, and it's, emotionally taxing and all of those things. And by the way, that has been a commonality no matter where I've been, no matter where on earth I go. That's what people tell me, is they're having a difficult time working with couples because they don't like how they have to kind of referee arguments, and they don't like how they have to uh, kind of help control that conversation. So we got in a conversation, and I didn't realize, I never really stopped and thought about how using solution focused in this way has helped reduce those arguments, or if other people who do solution focused couples work experience the same thing. But it's almost never that it happened in my office. So I thought one of the things that we would do today is I'm going to talk about how I think that happens, and there are 5 key points that take place in conversations in my office that don't really allow for the opportunity for arguments to take place. So, the first one is an intense focus on what the client wants. And I'll give you an example. This past Saturday, just 2 days ago, I saw a couple for the very first time, a wonderful husband and wife pair. Both of them were business owners, separate business. They don't own the same business together. And they'd been together for 19 years. This fall, they're going to celebrate their 20th wedding anniversary. And when they came to the session, it was very obvious to me that they were kind of frustrated about things. The husband was frustrated because he felt that the wife like the wife never gives him opportunities to contribute. He feels very controlled. Even finding me as a therapist, the wife did it and just told him that this is who I found, in spite of his request to be involved in that conversation. Um, so I would ask them, what are your best hopes from this therapy? The typical way that I open up sessions. And um, it was very obvious that there was lots of opportunities for arguments to take place. But by sticking very closely to what this particular couple wanted, those opportunities for arguments dissipated and eventually disappeared. So where nothing was left except we were talking about how each other contributed to their falling in love and what they would like their tomorrows to look like. And the conversation went on from that point. That's all we kind of talked about. They talked about how they wanted to manage their time better, and they wanted to return to the dating lifestyle that they had in the beginning of their relationship, and what that would look like, and more affection, more intimacy, and all these things, all these details um, that I really can't share here because I don't want to violate their confidentiality, but all these things. And at the end of the session, I asked, what are they going to take away from our talk? And the wife said, I came here fully prepared to spend about 3 sessions arguing, just because I feel like there was so much I needed to get off my chest. But somehow that did not take place, just because of the conversation that we had. And she felt better about the conversation we had than she anticipated how she would have felt if she had done her that arguing kind of get things off her chest that she anticipated doing. So point one is to focus on what the couple wants. The second thing is you have to use the couple's exact language. I have to be prepared to use the exact language content that the partners in the couple give me to build my next questions. And what this does is it drastically reduces my ability to offend either one, and it reduces the likelihood that I would accidentally walk into an argument because I wouldn't be using a phrase that would contribute to the way that they would argue. So, for example, and we're going to return to watching the videotape probably in about 15 minutes or so after I run down this list. Um, you'll see a sign where I said something, kind of an off the cuff comment, that could have provided an opportunity for an argument, and luckily the conversation kept going in a way that the argument did not take place. But you have to use the couple's exact language. I remember several years ago, and I hope it's okay that I use this word because I don't know how to tell this story without using kind of an inappropriate word. But several years ago, I was working with a couple, and the woman in the couple did not like being referred to as stubborn because for her, the word stubborn uh, triggered emotions that she had towards her mother. So if her husband ever said to her, "You're being stubborn," what she heard was, "You're being like your mother," which she did not enjoy. She did not like being referred to as your mother. But she had no problem whatsoever, none whatsoever, with him referring to her as the B word. Right? She had no problem with that word at all because it didn't engender those types of negative feelings for her. Now, I'm not one who likes to curse a whole lot, and especially in a professional setting, I'd prefer not to do that. But as I'm building my questions, if I had accidentally used the word stubborn, I would have walked into a situation where I would have upset her, I would have bothered her, I would have violated a rule that I didn't really know existed. But by sticking to that client's language, I was able to avoid that pitfall and just go forward in a way that the couple was okay with, in a way that they were pleased to be talking with me. Now, I had no way of knowing that that was the case, and in fact, I didn't realize how much of a trigger word stubborn was for her until the second session when I asked what had been better, and she came back and she said, he's not calling me stubborn anymore, even though I was aware that he was calling her the B word, or using the B word when discussing uh, some of her actions, and she didn't seem to be bothered by this. Like he would say, you're acting like a B, and that didn't bother her, but saying you're acting stubborn was absolutely a trigger for her. And I remember sitting in that second session being super duper glad that I had used her language, because I would never want to accidentally offend uh, anybody in therapy just by not sticking to their language. So that's the second point. By sticking to their exact language, you drastically reduce the ability for arguments to take place in your office. The third thing, and this is probably the most important aspect of doing solution building therapy, and why I think it drastically reduces the ability for couples to argue and for sessions to get quote unquote out of control, um, is it is a turn taking process, and every single person must take their turn. And that's very, very important. So when you're doing solution focused work, it is very much a turn taking process, and every single person must take their turn. Now, one particular partner, like the couple that I saw this Saturday, the husband and wife, the wife is much more talkative than the husband. So her turn ended up being longer than his turn, but each person must take their turn. This ensures, and that includes the therapist, by the way. All three of us in the room must take their turn to talk. This ensures that the conversation never really goes in any direction that all three people have not contributed to. Because if you think about it, if I'm using their language and I'm focusing on what they want, and I'm facilitating a conversation where each one is getting questions directed towards them, and they're each getting space to answer their questions, and I'm ensuring that I take my turn, then the conversation always flows towards what each other is trying to say and where each other is trying to go. The conversation can't go in any direction that the couple didn't contribute to, and the conversation can't go in any direction that I didn't contribute to, because we're all taking turns. Now, the tricky part of this is that means that us as clinicians, we have to have the ability to do something um, that in our regular worlds is would be viewed as rude, and that is we have to be able to interrupt a conversation for the point of taking our turn. Uh, I remember listening to Chris Iveson, somebody that I consider a very close friend and dear mentor. He was explaining that in his opinion, every solution focused therapist has to have their method of interrupting, and a method of interrupting that is right for them. Now, me, I grew up in Boston, and we're known for being rude and in your face kind of people. So I will very strongly and interrupt, and it's my turn, and I'll take my turn. Now, I frequently will not say it's my turn, but I will stop the conversation so that I can put my contribution to this particular segment of talking, so that the conversation goes in a way that I'm feeling like I'm contributing to and that works for me. And I have to be responsible for asking questions that bring about meaningful responses. So when the couple gives me their content, I have to use that content to facilitate a question. And by doing that, we ensure the conversation. It's kind of like a car, and three people have a steering wheel. I have to be willing to use my steering wheel to ensure that the car goes in a direction that all three people have contributed to. So I hope that makes sense. And then I also have to be the fourth thing is I have to be very, very aware. I have to be very, very determined to ask questions that are based on hope and strength as opposed to problem and deficit. And I'll give you an example using this couple from this weekend. Uh, wow, when I saw them, I didn't realize I'd be talking about them so much. But um, like I said, they've been together almost 20 years. And for the first 8 years of their relationship, and they've never sought marriage counseling before. Sorry, it's spring here in Texas, and my allergies kind of bad. But they had never sought marriage counseling before, and they've been together 20 years. So that's kind of a long time. For the first 5 to 7 years, according to both of their reports, the marriage was like a honeymoon. Like they were so thrilled and happy with the direction of the relationship. And then something happened to get off track. Now, when I asked this couple what were your best hopes from talking with me, the first thing they said was, we want to figure out how we got off track. And like I said, the wife in this partnership had a tendency to talk more than the husband. So the wife began to explain that she had a theory as to why they got off track, and her theory was based in her observations being part of the relationship. Seemed logical and rational to me, by the way. The husband explained that he also had a theory which differed from the wives on why he thought they got off track, which also is based on his observations and being a member of this partnership, and also seems rational and made some sense to me. Like I have no reason to believe that either one was inaccurate. I mean, they were just telling me what they thought. But if I ask questions based upon the theories of problem or the theories of deficits that led to them getting into this position, I would have lots of accurate content. Like they're both entrepreneurs, so the time that they spend in their relationship isn't isn't grand. And I could easily say, why do you guys do that? And you guys should do this instead. And have you considered this? I could easily say all of those things. Um, I could also talk about some of the life choices that they've made as they processed through these 20 years. And there were several things as they were explaining to me the theories and why they thought they had gotten into this place. But if I do all of those things, then I lose my ability to be an effective clinician. And I'm certainly not going to be doing anything that's congruent with the solution focused approach. So I've got to ask questions that are based on hope and strength and avoid questions that are based on problem and deficit, even though it is very, very tempting. It is very, very tempting to talk to them about those deficits and about those choices and about their lifestyle, but it's not my place, and it is not going to contribute to an effective therapy conversation. So after they both gave their theories of why they got into this position, I simply asked them how they had managed. And it was so funny because their theories of how they got into the position literally couldn't have been more different. So after I heard both of them, which took them, I don't know, probably slightly less than 10 minutes, I would guess. Well, maybe that might be too long. Maybe like, I don't know, 5 or 6 minutes probably. And their explanations on how they got in the position literally couldn't have differed from each other anymore. I asked them, so from what you guys have told me, you had gone about 5 to 7 years with your relationship being successful. And then after that, the next, dozen years have been a problem. Next dozen plus years have been a problem. You guys have been experiencing problems. And they both kind of nodded and they said yes. And I asked them how they held it together in spite of problems. And they looked completely baffled by this. And they kind of looked at each other and they start explaining how, now they had theories on how they kept it together in spite of problem, but their theories on how they kept it together were quite succinct with each other in a way that their theories on how it got off track were quite different. So by asking this question, it very much brought this particular couple together, and then we were able to have a therapeutic conversation that I hope this couple experience is helpful. Certainly appeared to me that they experienced it as helpful. And then we were able to do what would look commonly like solution focused therapy and begin the preferred future description and all of those things. But in the beginning of the session, it was quite obvious that these two people are not on the same page. these two folks are not thinking the same with the same brain about how they got into this position. And if I had tried to explore that, I'm not sure that we would have gotten anywhere. I'm not sure that the conversation would have gone in any kind of therapeutic way. So I think it's very, very important that we always ask questions, that we always make assumptions based on hope and strength. And the last thing is the fifth and final thing on this list is I want you to consider inviting couples to take credit for their successes. And it's kind of like that example I just used. By asking them how they were able to keep the relationship together in spite of these challenges, I'm inviting them to take credit for their success in a way that people don't usually do. And I've noticed this in relationships more so than I've seen it in any other area. Now, in the past, I've consulted with professional athletes. I'll use these guys as an example. And if I go talk to a professional sports team and I ask them, how did you guys become so good at this particular sport? They're going to take credit for it. They're going to tell me things like, I worked hard and I had a great coach and I listened to my coach and I spend hours in the gym and all of these answers. And really what they're doing is they're taking credit for their success, which they should do. They're allowed to do. You grow from that process. But when I ask couples, how did you create this relationship? We say very odd and very vague things like, oh, it just felt right. Or, oh, God just brought us together. And, oh, Cupid just shot me in the heart and I just fell for this person. But the simple truth is, you must have done things to contribute to this relationship being successful. You must have done things to contribute to this relationship lasting nearly 20 years. It couldn't have happened by accident. And by asking the couple a question simply, how did you do that? It allows them to start taking credit for this success. As in, this success was not an accident. I must have done something to make it happen. My husband must have done something to make it happen. And perhaps for the first time in their entire relationship, they start describing to me what it was they did. Now, why that's such an important component to not having arguments and things like that to make the conversation get off track is because once you start thinking positively, you don't go back to the previous disgruntled mindset. Like I've never once, as long as I've been doing this therapy, I've never once had a couple say, I came in here upset, you've asked me hope-laced questions, I want to go back to the deficit. It just doesn't seem to happen that way. Like once we're thinking positively, and when you're sitting next to somebody who is both taking credit for their success and giving you credit for yours, we're not likely to argue with that person. One of the reasons we argue is because we feel frustrated. And one of the reasons they bring arguments to my office is because they think that as a couples therapist that I need to hear the details of the argument so I could then uh, either educate them. Sometimes people think that I'm going to decide which one is right, which I'm wrong, and all types of things. But when you invite people to take credit, it introduces a level of positivity into the relationship that is both therapeutically appropriate, both therapeutically helpful, but also it reduces that desire for them to, unload and get things off their chest and lead towards arguments, which is probably the most powerful thing in a relationship. If any of you have purchased my book, Solution Building in Couples Therapy, I wrote about this idea of asking couples how they met, which I frequently do. In fact, I probably do it in every single first session I have with a couple, just so we can invite the opportunity for the couple to start taking credit for their successes instead of the blaming language that's used about the current problem that brought them into your office. Now, the first couple that I ever did this with, um, I tell this story pretty often, but the first story couple I ever did this with was I was an intern working at an agency. I was a licensed professional counselor intern. And I mean, I'll never forget this couple as long as I live. And I really wish that one day I'll cross paths with them so I could tell them just how much they've impacted my professional work. But I was so nervous. Back then I didn't realize that I would enjoy working with couples. In fact, I was just like many other clinicians, and couples work scared the daylights out of me. And there's this couple on my schedule, and they come to my office, and there's this big, Texan of a man, bearded, facial hair, very large guy. The type of guy that when he shook your hand, like his hand swallowed yours. Uh, and this woman who was very harsh in her own right and was very strong, uh, very Texan. You know, Texans are very rough and rugged kind of people, and or stereotypically anyway. And this couple absolutely fit those criteria. And I remember getting instantly nervous. And I asked the couple what they wanted to accomplish in therapy, and they instantly started arguing. And I mean bad, like to the point where I was literally thinking that this might break into a physical altercation. They were name calling. The husband punched the couch at one point. Like it was one of those arguments that was just awful. And I'm sitting in this office with this couple, sweating bullets, thinking, "What on earth am I going to do to allow this couple to feel like this has been helpful in some sort of way?" And nothing I said. I mean, they were literally ignoring me. Everything I tried to say to get this couple to stop fighting, they were literally, completely, and totally ignoring me. So I start thinking in my head, how had two people who obviously hate each other's guts, how did they even get together? And I asked them, I said, guys, how did you even meet? And I swear, they instantly stopped arguing. The husband turned to the wife and said, "Should you tell him the story or should I?" She laughed and said, "You tell it. I think you tell it better." And they proceeded to tell me one of the most romantic stories I'd ever heard, and arguing never happened again. Now, because I believe when you tell the story of how you met your partner, you just start thinking positively of that other person in a way that they obviously weren't doing before. So I sat there stunned. I mean, I was absolutely blown away. One, because of the details of the story I was hearing, and two, because I couldn't believe the dramatic shift of emotion in the room. I literally couldn't believe it. And what I learned from that is perhaps this going back to the time when the relationship was functioning at its most, honeymoonish, if you will, kind of does something viscerally to the couple that allows change to take place. Now, I remember 2 weeks later, my receptionist at that particular office came and told me that that couple was kissing on the couch prior to their next appointment. They came into the session and said everything had been different. And it all started with that question. It all started with their ability to go back to the honeymoon period and remember that I once liked you. And the things about you that I used to like are probably still present. So we can grow the relationship from there. So those are the 5 things. Focus on what the couple wants. Use their exact language. Make sure you take turns and recognize SFBT as a turn-taking process. Ask questions based on hope and strength as opposed to problem and deficits, and invite the couple to take credit for their successes. So I'm going to show the video that we have been watching, and I promise we'll use more videos, but this one just demonstrates so many of these aspects that it's one of my favorite training videos. Um, I'm gonna play a segment of tape from the conversation, probably about 2 or 3 minutes, not too long at all, of Dave and Celeste, just to demonstrate what I mean when I say all these 5 things, and I'm gonna point some things out on how the conversation gets steered towards hope and success and not towards problem. So, and then after that, I'll probably say a few words, and then I will open it up for question and answers in case you guys have any questions. Oh no. Well, of course, there's a technical issue, and an error occurred. Please try again later. Oh, I'm convinced that technology just universally hates everything about me. Oh, got it. All right, so I'm going to stop it there and just point something out. So when I asked Dave that question, Dave gave me lots of opportunity to explore problems and deficits, didn't he? I could have said things like, why isn't she wearing a wedding ring? How long has she not been wearing her wedding ring? What has occurred that caused her to take off her wedding ring? Um, how do you know that you're heading towards divorce? I mean, he gave, he gave me lots of opportunity to explore different aspects of problems. But had I done that, um, it would not have been therapeutically appropriate, in my opinion, but it also wouldn't have been sticking to the hopeful language of the solution focused approach. And I would have accidentally been guiding the conversation towards a higher likelihood of argument and a disheveled conversation. Now, even though, this is only a minute and 30 into the conversation, but I'm working really, really hard because I'm thinking, how do I use what he said and honor what he said, but also contribute in the conversation in a way that's congruent to the way that I like to work? So I have to stick very intently to the language that would, get at what he wanted from therapy, which turns out, he wants to look forward to coming home, which is hopeful, which is kind of a strength based answer as opposed to the initial answers he was giving that were based on problems and deficit. So I hope you guys are seeing. And you also notice that I was taking my turn. So when he gave an answer, I would build a question. He would give an answer. I would build a question. He would give an answer. I would build a question. That's the very essence of the solution building process. So let's see what Celeste says. So she also, in a very different way, gave me a problem that I could have explored. She gave me kind of a deficit that I could have talked about when she said I'm not feeling very hopeful. The first therapy training I received, in fact, would have told me that my first job with Dave and Celeste would have been to quote unquote get them on the same page, and I would have to have a conversation with them that increased motivation. But in solution focused therapy, we assume motivation anyway. I mean, why else would they be in our office? They must be motivated by something. And she gave a response that would make this particular person, the person that originally trained me in a model not solution focused, that she's not motivated and she's not hopeful. In fact, she said those exact words. I'm not feeling very hopeful at all. And my original therapy trainer, who practiced cognitive behavioral therapy actually, would have told me that I would have had to explore that with her because you can't do therapy until she's hopeful. But in SFT, we assume hopefulness anyway. We assume hopefulness and motivation off the top already. So I just continue on asking her what she wants. And it turns out that she does want something that is hopeful and present focused and based in strength, which is, I just want to be friends again, right? Which I still don't necessarily see that as, jumping up and down with enthusiasm about Dave, but it's certainly a step away from I'm not feeling very hopeful and um, a step towards a better relationship, I guess is probably the best way I could say it. And when we do this, we reduce the likelihood of arguments and conversations kind of getting off track. Now, as it were, Dave continues. I don't know if you guys could tell from that clip, but Dave is really irritated. Dave is really bothered by some things. And Dave gives me other opportunity to explore problems. But as I said earlier, when you stick to this language, those opportunities dissipate and then eventually disappear to the point where at the end of the conversation, it was just three people having a very hope filled, detailed, rich conversation uh, about what they would like their lives to look like. And it completely transformed how this relationship functioned after this point. Um, so I guess that's all that I wanted to cover. So what I'm going to do now, if I can do it without breaking anything, is open you guys up for questions and see if there's anybody. Oh, whoops. Sorry, of course, I have to break things. And see if there is any questions that you guys would have. And I hope I did a good job of explaining um, kind of what I was thinking and explaining the way that this, looks clinically in session. And hopefully you guys were able to take this information and have conversations that you wouldn't view as leading towards arguments or, those very difficult couple sessions that scare the daylights out of therapists around the world. So, all right, so I'm going to put everybody in question and answer mode. Okay, so you guys we're on question and answer mode, which means everybody is muted. And how about we use the hand raising feature? So if you have a question or comment you'd like to share, you can chat it to me in the chat window there to the left, or raise your hand, and then I will unmute you and we will be able to address that question. So finally, after 45 minutes of yammering, I will stop talking. So are there any questions or comments? Okay, so somebody just chatted that I had a couple disclose infidelity. Okay? Can I ask? And that's Christina. So Christina, can I ask how you handled it? All right. So she said it's hard to move towards preferred future now. When did they disclose the infidelity for the first time in the session? Was that the first time that their partner heard about it? Okay. So yes, it is very hard to move on from a preferred future when those type of disclosures happen, but it is still necessary and still our job to continue the conversation moving forward. I had a couple once, and I've had many, many couples over the years disclose infidelity, and unfortunately, that's a part of working with couples, and that's a part of doing couples therapy is dealing with issues such as that. But I had a couple one time where the wife disclosed to the husband that she used to be a prostitute and she used to work in a very prominent prostitution city and was a call girl. And I remember Christina probably sitting there similarly to what you were doing, like, what on earth do I do now? And the simple truth is, the only thing I could do is what I know how to do, which is ask questions that bring about useful information and keep the conversation moving in a detailed, rich way. Now, it depends on when those types of things come up on how we continue to move forward, but it is absolutely still paramount and tantamount to our job that we keep asking useful questions that are based on hope and strength and not problem and deficit. So in my response, I did not ask a single question about her prostitution. I simply addressed that this gentleman was hurt, and he was. He felt betrayed, and he did. And I said, so what would you guys like to chat about next? And they said, we want our relationship to look like so and so. And we began to have a conversation rich with details about that thing. So even in this session, Christina, when the infidelity was disclosed, we have to ask, what would you still like your relationship to look like? And continue to work with them to get them to describe that relationship to you. Because never forget, in the solution building process, the helpfulness takes place in the detailed description. So all they have to do is to describe a detailed reality to you of how they would like their relationship to look. So our job is to simply ask questions about that. Of course, couples don't always make this look easy. Um, since you asked that question, I have a therapy tape where It was a couple. It's actually the couple that I just transcribed in my book, where infidelity was revealed, and I want to reveal that. So let me see. And Andy, you just asked a question. It says private to the presenter. Is it okay if I respond out loud? Is that okay? Oh, okay, good. So luckily, um, uh, oh, you're welcome, Christina. So Andy's question is: Sometimes I feel that SFBT does not go deep enough with clients. Enough thoughts on getting beyond superficial responses to how things have been better in the past. Um, wow, that is such a great question. I could probably talk for another hour about that. So, Andy, I'm going to try to respond to this in a very useful way, but I recognize that it'll be brief. There's going to be a lot of brevity to what I say, so hopefully you'll find something useful. And Steve DeShazer, one of the creators of this solution-focused approach, says you're supposed to stay on the surface. This is not an approach where you dig deep or there's deep content. Staying on the surface in SFT is actually a good thing because the usefulness, the work actually occurs at the conversation level. So simply describing the reality that you would like to be living in changes your life experience. That is the belief of SFBT and why you would say that it doesn't feel like it always doesn't go deep enough, which I completely agree with. When I was learning this solution focused approach, as I was kind of mentioning earlier, my original training was in cognitive behavioral therapy, which is an approach of some depth and an approach of some, it felt like I was doing work when I was doing cognitive behavioral therapy in a way that SFT didn't. So, like with Christina's example, somebody disclosed infidelity, or with the example that I gave, somebody discloses that they used to be a prostitute, and all we do is describe how we'd like tomorrow to look. It just feels like it's surfacey and it feels like we're not doing enough to help the clients move. But the truth is, we are. Now, I will be very, very honest with you guys and tell you that when I first heard this approach coming from my cognitive behavioral background, I was extremely skeptical. When I learned from Linda Metcalf, the person who introduced me to solution focused therapy, uh, when I learned about these things, I was very skeptical. I was very, uh, I guess, for lack of a better term, what I can only describe as non believing. And even to this day, sometimes I feel like, it just can't be this simple. Like, it can't be this simple. And the truth is that it is. Now, to remind me that it is, I have a drawer in my office where I keep little trinkets that couples send to me and that clients send to me to remind me that just by sticking to the client's language and doing this very simple work, that helpfulness does work. Like, in essence, Andy, by sticking to the surface, that helpfulness does occur. That couple that I was referring to earlier, they send me Christmas cards to this day about the success of their family, and we met originally in 2007, and it's now 6 years later, and we only met 3 times, and in spite of all of the challenging things, all of the deeper things that were going on in their lives, all they did to me was to describe the way they would like their relationship to look, starting from the way the relationship grew, and it was different. Like, it was, I hesitate to say it worked, but it caused them to experience change in a way. So if it feels superficial to stick to what Steve DeShazer and Insoo Kim Berg would say, that means you're probably doing it right, and you just have to trust the process. And in my experience, it wasn't my professors or my mentors that taught me to trust the process. My professors and mentors taught me how to do solution-focused therapy, but it's been my clients and continues to be my clients that teach me to trust the process. So I hope that that's a helpful answer, Andy. Now, Carol has her hand raised. I can see that, so I'm going to unmute Carol. There you go, Carol. You are unmuted. Carol, you are unmuted. Do you have a question? Oh, okay. Well, then I'll mute you again. How about that? All right. So I see your comment, which I'll read that. I can tell that I'm getting there in terms of the solution building approach, but now realize I'm not tracking their answers carefully and building my questions from these. I will practice today. Well, yeah, I mean, the solution focused approach is very simple, but very hard. It is very, very hard to do. And especially I think there's, I don't know, 8, 9 of people on the call, but all of us are crazy enough to want to do this with couples. So not only is solution building difficult, but we've added a significant variable into the room, which is A, another person, and B, another person in a setting where there's high emotionality. So this is an extremely difficult thing to do and takes practice, 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 practice. Now, I've been in private practice for the past 8 years, and I've probably been seeing about 35 clients a week throughout that time. And about 2/3 of that is couples therapy. So about 20 couples per week for 5 years. And I still feel like I'm practicing and I'm just now getting it. You know what I mean? Like, so it takes a lot of practice, and it's like just like working out any muscle. It's an exercise, and it's gonna take time, and you just got to keep sharpening it, sharpening it, sharpening it. And I think as solution focused people, we are forever students. Like, we're forever going to be students of this approach and students of our clients. And I'm absolutely not kidding. If any of you came into my office, you would be able to see that there's a shelf on my desk that's filled with little trinkets and papers and cards. And I'm looking in there now. There's a graduation photo of this kid who sent me. All of these things are in there just to show me that by sticking to this language, people experience helpfulness. And it totally, totally, totally takes practice. My probably closest mentor at this point, I don't know, between Linda Metcalf and Chris Iveson, is Chris Iveson. And he likes to say that when he first learned this approach, he would practice to see how long he could stay in a solution building conversation. And he said he started out at 7 minutes. And then he could focus that intently for about 7 minutes. And then it kind of got off track. And it takes practice, kind of build it, build it, build it, build it, build it. And then, so I would advise people to keep practicing, keep practicing. Just like any other muscle, you'll get stronger as you do it. Um, Somebody else said something. Some of my clients laugh when I ask what went well this past week, and they say you always ask that. And it's funny, because I have clients that ask that all the time. What went well this past week? I ask what went well this past week, and they laugh and say you always ask that. But that's still where I need to start my content. So when clients come in and they say that, it doesn't matter that they expect it. Um, I have couples that come to the office and they know that's where I'm going to start. So that guides their perception throughout the week, 2 weeks, month, whatever it is between the appointments, which absolutely has therapeutic value. The fact that they know they're going to have to answer this question, and it's thus guiding their what they're attending to between appointments. So that's kind of part of the reason we ask that question. So keep doing it. All right. So Wendy in the United Kingdom has a question, and I'm going to unmute Wendy. Wendy, you there? You are unmuted. Yes, I can hear you. Yes, yes, yes. And I would add that that's probably the reason that I start with what's been better since we last met, or what went well this week. Some version that immediately shifts the attention to the up parts. Now, remember, couples are going to think that you need to know about the argument that they had last night. But it's almost impossible for them to have had a week where at least something didn't go well. Well, okay, so somebody wanted to repeat the question. The question was, she was saying that she had a couple come, and she said, "So how have things been?" And the couple said, "Well, we had this big argument last week, and how to handle that." And I would say kind of what the last question asker said, which was, you start the session off with what's gone better, what's been well, what's, some form of that, so that you're immediately shifting the focus to hope-filled, strength-based questions. And then when the content comes out, it just comes out in a very different way, and it doesn't allow for the session to as easily get off track, and for us as clinicians to as easily get sucked into a problem-laced discussion, where at least in my case, I'm not nearly as skilled at having problem-focused conversations than I am as having solution-focused conversations. So it's 1 o'clock, so I guess our time is up. And, thank you guys so very much for being on this call. I really, really appreciate it, and I hope that you found this useful. It's weird. I give lots of lectures, and I can, clearly see feedback in that setting. But when you do these types of webinars, like I have no idea. So I genuinely do hope you guys find this useful. I'm very dedicated to contributing to this field in a way that allows people to not be so scared of working with couples, and allows couples to experience helpfulness and keep relationships and families together as much as possible, and keep people happy, and uh, uh, just keep people moving in the right direction. So thank you guys all for being part of this call, and don't forget to be on the call next month, where we'll have a whole new topic, and I promise I'll show a new videotape. But I just like that one a lot. It demonstrates a lot of the different components of the solution building approach. So thank you, everybody, and I hope you guys all have great weeks, and you spend a month practicing your solution building techniques, and I'll see you later. And for all of the new people that joined today, thank you, and I very much hope that you would become a regular on our monthly webinar. And if you guys are experiencing this helpfulness, please share it with your friends and colleagues. Well, thank you very much, and have a good day.